Welcome to the deep dive.
Hello.
Today we are attempting a massive, and I have to say, a pretty daunting task.
It really is.
We're going to try and synthesize the entire saga of Jeffrey Epstein. This narrative is it's overwhelming.
It is. It spans everything from, the mystery of his wealth to the mechanics of his criminal enterprise.
Right, and then you have the colossal legal failures, the political connections, and of course, the incredibly troubling circumstances around his death.
It's a truly unusual set of sources we're drawing from today. We're relying really heavily on primary evidence.
Things like sworn depositions, court motions.
Exactly. Court motions about discovery, about victims' rights, and official investigative reports, especially the big one from the Department of Justice's OIG.
So our mission here, really, is to extract the most critical facts, the judicial opinions, the documented allegations from this mountain of material.
We want to give you, the listener, a structured way to understand this incredibly complex story, so you can walk away thoroughly informed without being, buried in legal jargon.
That's the key. Comprehensive, but streamlined. Okay, so let's unpack this and start at the very, very beginning.
Makes sense.
Before all the crimes came to light, the first mystery was always Epstein's money, his vast financial empire. He didn't inherit it. So what do the files actually tell us about where he came from?
Well, his early life, as it's documented, it offers almost no clues that he would become this, global elite figure.
Not at all.
He was born in 1953, grew up in Coney Island, went to Lafayette High School. His formal education was, it was fragmented.
Right, he took courses at Cooper Union, physics, I think.
Yeah, physics at Cooper Union from 69 to 71, but he left without a degree. Then he did courses in, of all things, mathematical physiology of the heart at NYU.
Also left without a degree.
So you see this pattern emerging, right? He engages with these really high-level, technical, abstract fields, but he never actually completes the formal academic path.
And his one documented career move after that was teaching.
High school math and physics. At the Dalton School, which, is one of New York's most elite prep schools.
And he was there from 73 to 76 or so.
That's right. And this is really the pivot point in the entire Epstein story. An administrator later told investigators that he was actually dismissed for poor performance.
Fired for poor performance, and then he transitions. How?
The transition is startling. He goes directly from being a high school teacher, reportedly fired, to getting an introduction to the world of Wall Street.
And this came through one of his students' parents, right?
Yes. The Wall Street father of a Dalton student was apparently so impressed by what he called Epstein's passionate mathematical riffs that he suggested Epstein call Ace Greenberg at Bear Stearns.
So just one chance encounter based on his talent for a kind of intellectual performance, that's what launches him into high finance.
That's the story. It's an incredible leap of faith for a big Wall Street player to make for a dismissed high school teacher.
It really shows that unique quality he must have had, that charm and intellectual intensity, even back then.
Absolutely. And that one introduction, it just set the stage for this incredibly opaque financial career. The documents confirm the wealth was vast, but how he got it, notoriously murky, which is, of course, what fueled so many theories later on.
So what are the big confirmed client relationships that the files identify?
The sources confirm his largest reported clients were the retail magnate Leslie Wexner and the financier Leon Black.
And the numbers there are staggering.
Reports suggest Epstein got hundreds of millions of dollars from just those two individuals for sophisticated tax and estate planning services.
Hundreds of millions from two clients. That suggests the services he was providing were, either uniquely valuable or involved an insane level of trust and secrecy.
Or both. It paints a picture of him not just as a financial advisor, but as an architect of secrecy for the ultra-rich.
Did the sources offer any insight into his other clients, the ones we don't know about?
We have some really telling anecdotal evidence on that
It
from, established figures.
like that lawyer, Dennis Block.
Exactly. Dennis Block, a noted M&A lawyer, he recalled sending Epstein a potential client worth $500 million. This was a few years before the 2008 scandal broke.
And Epstein's reaction.
When Block talked to him about this massive account, Epstein just rejected it. He told Block it was too small.
Too small, $500 million.
It just strongly suggests he had other, much wealthier clients that we still don't know about. It helps explain why so much of his financial background is still completely hidden.
And at the same time, you have this shadow of outright fraud just lurking in the background, even if he never got charged himself.
Oh, absolutely. The documents explicitly link him to Towers Financial.
Which was one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in U.S. history.
A massive one. The founder, Stephen Hoffenberg, reportedly called Epstein his wingman in the whole operation.
But Epstein was never charged.
Never charged, and that's a crucial distinction. But the association confirms that his introduction to making vast, fast money happened inside a known criminal environment. He learned how to operate outside the lines.
So he's got these dubious dealings on one hand, but then he also has these massive, legitimate investment windfalls on the other.
Correct. The perfect example is his investment in Peter Thiel's VC firm, Velar Ventures.
Which specialized in tech startups.
Right, financial tech. So Epstein puts in $40 million in 2015 and 2016. By the time he died and the probate filings came out, that investment had grown to nearly $170 million.
Wow.
It became the single largest asset in his $600 million estate. So it just illustrates how he used both the shadowy tactics and really savvy, legitimate tech investments to build his fortune.
And he was also using legal structures in the Caribbean to protect and grow that wealth.
Absolutely. The documents show he got these massive tax advantages in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He set up companies under their economic development program.
And that gives you, what, a huge tax cut?
Huge. Up to a 90% cut on corporate income tax, plus full exemptions from property and customs taxes. It's just a masterclass in using access and legal loopholes for massive personal gain.
So you have this picture of a man building a fortune, and then using that fortune to create this high-level intellectual facade, constantly surrounding himself with major thinkers.
Very deep connections and very expensive ones. The materials suggest he was spending something like $20 million a year on scientists, on research, cultivating relationships with people like the Nobel Prize winner Gerald Edelman and the biologist E.O. Wilson.
And Edelman apparently praised Epstein's mind, his ability to grasp complex ideas.
He did. He praised his ability to pick up on quantitative relations, which just reinforced this public image of Epstein as this misunderstood, brilliant guy.
And he wasn't just reading science as a hobby. He was actively using it to kind of rationalize his worldview, which is where it starts to feel really manipulative.
He was weaponizing scientific theory. He'd twist concepts from evolutionary biology to create this perverse justification for his role as an elite master of the universe.
I remember reading, he was really into E.O. Wilson's book, Consilience.
Yes, which is all about the unification of knowledge. And Epstein explicitly connected these complex scientific ideas to market behavior.
What was the specific connection he was drawing there?
He wrote to a scientist friend about the behavior of termites, ants, and bees, how these, fundamentally dumb insects could create complex societies based on mutual altruism.
And he saw that as a precursor to human trust and money.
Exactly. His theory was that if you could figure out how these simple insects built trusting economies, you could understand the basic principles of modern markets. It just paints this picture of a man trying to intellectually validate his ability to manipulate massive systems.
Rationalizing his own exploitation by framing it as operating on some higher scientific plane.
Precisely.
So we have this image of the global brainiac, the master of the universe, using science and opaque finance to build his position. But how did that impressive facade actually enable the core criminal enterprise?
And that brings us directly to Ghislaine Maxwell.
It does, because that transition is crucial. The facade of wealth and academia, that's what provided the lure and the insulation.
It's Maxwell's conviction that really exposes the cold, mechanical architecture of the abuse. I mean, court documents explicitly described her as running the house like a brothel.
That is a brutal description, but it comes directly from sworn testimony, right? About how organized it all was.
Exactly. The evidence at her trial focused on a decade-long scheme. It was concentrated between 1994 and 1997 in the trial, but the scheme was much longer. And she was absolutely instrumental.
So it wasn't just facilitating?
No, not at all. She actively enticed, groomed, transported, and trafficked numerous young women and minors for sex with Epstein.
What were her documented methods? I mean, how did she identify and control these girls? How did she break down their defenses?
She targeted vulnerability with absolute precision. The girls were often facing some kind of hardship.
Financial problems, family issues.
Right. Financial distress, substance abuse issues, or sometimes they had a history of prior sexual abuse. Maxwell would then create this powerful illusion of friendship, of being this responsible adult supervisor.
Flying them on private jets, introducing them to this glamorous world.
Which is a classic grooming tactic.
Ugh.
It isolates them from their normal life, from anyone who might critique or question what's happening.
And then she manipulated that trust using the now infamous massage code.
The massage code was absolutely central to the whole process. It was the pretext. It was how she normalized the sexual abuse.
The house manager, Juan Alessi, he confirmed this, right? In a sworn statement.
Yes, he told the Palm Beach police that girls would come over all the time for massages, and he noted they looked incredibly young.
16 or 17 years of age at most.
That's his quote. It confirms the whole system was built on this deception of age and purpose.
And Johannes Sjoberg's testimony provided this really chilling contrast between how Epstein used that term versus how Maxwell did.
Yes, Sjoberg distinguished very clearly between them. She said Maxwell was not very picky during her massages, implying Sjoberg could do them casually, which reinforced this idea that it was a normal service.
But with Epstein, it was different.
Completely different. She recalled that Epstein would narrate what he wanted. He'd specify, do my foot, do my leg, actively directing the activity into explicit sexual abuse, all under the guise of this therapeutic thing.
The code word was a cover for coercion. And the court filings detail Maxwell's direct participation in the abuse, not just setting it up. This is so critical for understanding her culpability.
It established her role far beyond being a mere procurer. Trial evidence confirmed she personally participated in acts of sexual abuse.
The witness known as Jane.
Yes, Jane testified that Maxwell instructed her at age 14 on how to touch Epstein's penis during a massage, and that Maxwell also touched Jane's breasts. This shows her actively participating in both the normalization and the execution of the abuse. She was often modeling the behavior Epstein wanted.
And the scheme was designed to be self-perpetuating, wasn't it? Using the victims to recruit others.
Exactly. They were paid in cash, hundreds of dollars, just for showing up. But crucially, they were offered more money if they brought other girls into the fold.
So it turned the victims into recruiters themselves?
Unwitting recruiters for the network.
Right.
Honest Sjoberg testified that Maxwell explicitly asked her to find other girls, and even paid her $200 for one girl's name. It created this malignant network effect.
The power dynamics are just so stark in the depositions. Sjoberg even recalled Maxwell using a truly disturbing term for another girl.
She recalled Maxwell referring to Emmy Taylor as her slave.
Slave?
That single chilling word just underscores the total control and dehumanization that Maxwell was imposing on these young women.
And the pressure was constant.
Sjoberg testified about a conversation where Maxwell was disappointed that Sjoberg hadn't finished my job during a massage, and that Maxwell had to finish it for me.
And Sjoberg's interpretation of that?
She stated it plainly. She said, I took that conversation to mean that sexual acts were what was expected of me. She even recalled Maxwell implying that having other girls around took sexual pressure off her, which created this horrible competitive environment among the victims.
And for this all to work, you needed this pervasive culture of silence. It had to extend to the household staff.
Absolutely. The house manager, Alessi, testified that Maxwell would go upstairs toward the bedrooms when girls arrived. But his main instruction from Epstein and Maxwell was absolute.
See nothing, hear nothing, say nothing.
Exactly. That instruction fostered an environment where silence was mandatory. It allowed the abuse to continue completely unchecked.
The sheer scope of Maxwell's involvement is really quantified by the flight logs. They became key evidence.
The logs confirmed the mobility of the operation. Maxwell was on Epstein's planes over 300 times. She was his constant companion and facilitator.
Including those flights with Virginia Jefferey when she was underage.
Yes. 23 specific flights identified with Virginia Jefferey while she was a minor. And yet, despite those undeniable records, when Maxwell was asked about them in her deposition,
she couldn't recall
a single one of them. It just illustrates the deliberate attempt to obscure the evidence.
So we have this architecture of abuse laid bare, but it couldn't have operated for so long, attracting these high-profile people without critical legal and political failures.
And that brings us to the bigger picture. The initial 2008 deal Epstein got was so unbelievably lenient that it sparked a decade-long legal battle.
A battle centered on victims' rights.
It was. That 2008 deal was the non-prosecution agreement, the NPA. It was negotiated by the U.S. Attorney for Southern Florida at the time, Alexander Acosta.
And under that deal, Epstein basically walked.
He pleaded guilty to minor state charges, soliciting a minor, and he averted a possible life sentence in federal prison. He served just 13 months, and most of that was on work release.
And the NPA was so devastating because of how sweeping its protections were.
It was strategically designed that way. It didn't just give immunity to Epstein. It extended immunity to any potential co-conspirators of Epstein.
Which became the main target for the victim's lawyers later on.
Of course, because it shielded everyone else involved, Maxwell, any high-profile partners, from federal prosecution.
So what was the official finding later on regarding Acosta's conduct in that deal?
A later DOJ report concluded that Acosta used poor judgment. It called the NPA a flawed mechanism. But, and this is the key legal loophole.
It found that his prosecutors did not commit formal misconduct.
Right.
How did they avoid a misconduct finding?
Because the report found there was no clear and unambiguous duty under the existing law for them to consult with the victims before entering into the agreement.
So because no formal charges had been filed yet, they were technically in the clear?
Legally, yes. The report was highly critical of the lack of consultation. But because of that timing, it wasn't technically misconduct. It was a failure of duty, not a failure of law, according to the report.
And that technicality immediately kicked off this landmark legal fight, the CVRA case.
The Crime Victims' Rights Act battle.
Right. So the victims argued that the CVRA, which mandates things like the right to confer with prosecutors, should apply even before formal charges are filed.
They needed to void that sweeping immunity provision in the NPA. That was the goal, to open the door to prosecuting Epstein's co-conspirators.
But the court panel ruled against them.
The 11th Circuit panel found that the CVRA was not triggered until federal charges were formally instituted.
So the practical consequence of that ruling is that prosecutors could just strike secret deals.
The majority's holding meant that prosecutors could enter into secret pleas and NPAs without ever notifying or conferring with victims, as long as they did it before filing official charges. It left Epstein's victims, in the court's own words, empty-handed.
Which just seems to defeat the entire spirit of the CVRA.
It provoked a really strenuous dissent from Judge Hall. She argued the majority patently erred in reading the law so narrowly.
And she pointed out that the U.S. Attorney's Office in that district had actually been doing this for years, right? Applying the CVRA precharge.
Exactly. For over 8 years, it was standard operating procedure. This demonstrated that consulting victims precharge was entirely feasible. It was the norm until the Epstein case. But the panel just deferred to Congress to fix the loophole.
And this whole legal fight over immunity for co-conspirators, it laid the groundwork for the deepest revelations in the files.
It brings us to the guest list.
Part 4. The high-profile names and the allegations. The documents released during discovery brought so many powerful people into the public eye.
And it often led to immediate and intense legal retaliation. One of the most controversial figures to emerge was, of course, Alan Dershowitz.
So what specifically was alleged in the court filings about him?
A woman identified as Jane Doe, #3, alleged she was forced to have sexual relations with Alan Dershowitz back in 1999.
And the allegation then connects directly back to that legal failure we were just talking about.
Right. She alleged that Dershowitz later played a significant role in negotiating that very NPA on Epstein's behalf. The same agreement that granted immunity to all potential co-conspirators.
So the victim's filing is framing this as an alleged abuser directly negotiating the deal that would protect himself from prosecution for that very allegation.
That is the explicit connection made in the filings. And what's more, the flight logs corroborate that Dershowitz flew on Epstein's plane several times.
In 98, 99, 2005.
Yes. And one of those 2005 trips showed him traveling with a woman named Tatiana. Despite all this, Dershowitz has always publicly and vehemently denied ever being on the plane with young women.
And his reaction when the victims filed their motions was aggressive.
Very aggressive and very public. After Jane Doe #3 and Doe #4 filed their motion, he went on CNN and just attacked their attorneys, Paul Cassell and Bradley Edwards.
He called them unethical lawyers.
Unethical lawyers who are prepared to lie, cheat, and steal. He even suggested they should be disbarred. It just shows the intensity of the legal and PR battle around that immunity provision.
Now, moving to Prince Andrew, the files contain similarly specific and disturbing claims from Virginia Jeffrey.
Yes, Virginia Roberts Jeffrey is the primary accuser there. She claims she was recruited as a sex slave and was forced to have sex with Prince Andrew in New York, London, and on the island in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
And Buckingham Palace has just denied everything consistently.
Denied it all. And it became a major point of contention that Andrew refused to even accept the legal papers served by her lawyers requesting him to answer questions.
What were some of the specific details Jeffrey provided?
She provided some startling details. She claimed that when they first met, Prince Andrew correctly guessed that she was just 17 years old. And she said she was explicitly told to give him anything he wanted.
And her claims were corroborated to some extent by another witness.
By Johannes Schuberg, yes. She confirmed seeing Prince Andrew, Virginia, Jeffrey, and Maxwell all together in the living room of the New York house. And she recalled this weird, almost theatrical detail.
A puppet.
Maxwell brought out a Prince Andrew caricature, or puppet, from a closet. It's such a strange, memorable detail that helps ground the allegation into physical reality.
And it's important to step back and think about the purpose of this network. It wasn't just about sexual gratification, was it?
The court filings assert that Epstein's explicit purpose in lending girls to powerful people was multifaceted. It was to ingratiate himself with them for business, personal, political, and financial gain. And, critically, to obtain potential blackmail material.
That implication that the abuse was a calculated tool for high-level leverage, that changes the whole scope of the enterprise.
It reframes it as a political or financial mechanism.
Now, one figure who frequently resurfaces in the travelogues and correspondence is Bill Clinton.
Yes, flight logs confirm Clinton flew several times on Epstein's plane. Separately, allegations surfaced from a woman named Virginia Ransom.
What did she claim?
She claimed her friend was forced to have sex with Clinton in Epstein's New York mansion, and that sex tapes were filmed which clearly identified Clinton's face.
That is an extraordinary claim. That tapes existed of a former U.S. president. What was the response to that in the filings?
Well, the claims about tapes were broad. Ransom also claimed tapes were filmed of her friend with Prince Andrew and Richard Branson.
But it's crucial to look at the defense strategy here.
It is. Maxwell's defense team later argued that Jeffrey's claims about Clinton being on the island were totally debunked by Louis Freeh, the former head of the FBI. This just illustrates the intense, contradictory claims that are all embedded in the legal context. It's incredibly difficult for the public to sort fact from legal maneuver.
So we just have to report the claims as they were made in the filings and the counter-arguments made in response.
Exactly.
And outside of these specific allegations, Epstein was clearly just leveraging his associations through constant name-dropping.
Oh, constantly. Johannes Schuberg testified that while she was massaging him, he'd be on the phone and mention major celebrities.
Oh, that was Leonardo.
Or that was Cate Blanchett or Bruce Willis. She said it was just name-dropping, him projecting this image of power and access to reinforce his status, even to the victims. Even if those people, like Blanchett or DiCaprio, had no direct involvement in the abuse at all.
The complexity of this network is precisely why Epstein's 2019 arrest felt like such a long-awaited moment of justice.
And it's why the circumstances of his death in federal custody remain one of the most scrutinized aspects of this entire saga.
So we have to address what the official investigation found, the failures at MCC New York.
The official investigation by the DOJ's Office of the Inspector General, the OIG, found what they called catastrophic policy violations. Numerous and serious failures that compromised Epstein's safety and, gave him the opportunity to commit suicide.
It wasn't a single error.
It was a total systemic collapse.
Let's quickly review the timeline leading up to his death, because there was that prior incident on July 23rd.
Right. So he's arrested July 6, 2019, held without bond at the NCC in New York's Special Housing Unit, the SHU. On July 23rd, he's found injured in his cell. Possible suicide attempt.
And his story about that kept changing.
It did. First, he claimed his cellmate tried to kill him. Then he said he didn't know what happened and asked to be put back with the same cellmate. It just raised immediate questions about his psychological state.
So given that serious incident, they put him on suicide watch. How quickly was he taken off?
Just one day later, on July 24th. Formal psychological observation ended on July 30th. But crucially, even though he was off watch, the psychology department issued a written directive.
That he had to have a cellmate at all times.
That was the key safety protocol. He was required to have a cellmate.
And this is where the system completely and utterly failed.
It was a monumental, avoidable policy failure. The OIG found that on August 9th, his assigned cellmate was permanently transferred out of the facility.
And the staff.
The SHU staff completely failed to assign him a new one, despite that clear, written directive. So Epstein was left alone in his cell from the night of August 9th until he was found hanged the next morning.
Beyond the cellmate failure, the staff responsible for supervising the unit were clearly just not doing their jobs.
The entire system of counts and rounds completely collapsed that night.
Yeah.
The staff failed to do the 12 a.m., 3 a.m., and 5 a.m. counts, all of them.
And the rounds, which were supposed to be twice an hour.
They failed to do those too. The OIG reviewed the camera footage and confirmed the UZIOs were just not conducting accurate counts or rounds.
And what about the paperwork, the log sheets for these checks?
This is where it goes from incompetence to deliberate deception. Staff admitted to the OIG that they had improperly filled out the round sheets. They falsified official records to make it look like they did the checks that they never completed.
And the staffing situation that night sounds profoundly unstable. A guard working 24 hours straight.
A recipe for disaster. One material handler agreed to work a third shift in a row, so he was working 24 hours straight. He later admitted to the OIG he didn't do the mandatory counts and rounds because he was just too tired.
And finally, the physical security of the cell itself was compromised. He had too much stuff.
The OIG noted he had an excess of blankets, linens, and clothing, which is a violation of basic security protocol. Photos from the cell after his death showed some of those linens had been ripped into strips and tied to the desk and bunk bed, consistent with a noose.
Now, there are two specific details from August 8th and 9th that raise even more complex concerns. First, the will.
On August 8th, 2 days before his death, Epstein signed a brand new last will and testament.
Inside the jail.
Inside the jail. It was notarized. The attorney visitor logs confirm it. But the OIG confirmed that the MCC New York personnel were completely unaware that he had just changed his will 48 hours before he died.
And the second major failure involves the security cameras, the non-recording cameras. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, but the OIG proved it was just incompetence.
It's maybe the most profound technical failure of the whole event. The OIG found long-standing deficiencies in the camera system. Specifically, the DDR that controlled the SHU cameras had a disk failure around July 29th.
So for days, the cameras were only streaming live video. They weren't recording anything.
Exactly. And the staff didn't even learn about this critical failure until August 8th, just 2 days before his death.
And when they learned about it, why wasn't it fixed immediately, given who was in that cell?
The technician determined it was a time-consuming repair. 2 hard drives needed replacing. The DVR needed to be rebuilt. He left at the end of his shift on August 8th without doing it. He said he had no idea why he didn't stay, but cited a lack of urgency and a culture where staff weren't required to stay late for repairs.
So because of that, the recording function was not restored before Epstein died.
Which means for the critical hours of August 9th and 10th, there is no recorded evidence of who went in or out of his cell. It completely compromised any possibility of accountability.
And that lack of accountability brings us to the wider struggle for transparency. The legal and technical chaos around releasing the Epstein files themselves.
The legal battles over disclosure revealed immense friction, aggressive tactics, and ultimately a surprising amount of technical incompetence.
Let's start with the spectacular failure of the redaction process, which I think embarrassed the entire legal system.
It was an incredible public flop. The release was meant to be a milestone for transparency, but it failed almost immediately because of a basic technical flaw.
The black box.
The heavy black redaction blocks in the PDFs. People discovered that if you just highlighted the text, copied it, and pasted it into a plain text editor,
the secret information, the names, it all just appeared.
it became completely visible. This massive security oversight just undercut the entire transparency effort.
And beyond the redactions, the documents revealed a complex political landscape through his emails and correspondence.
Yes, the correspondence covered 2009 to 2019. One key, though context-dependent, revelation involved raw email counts. Donald Trump was named at least 1,500 times.
Compared to about 500 for Bill Clinton and 300 for Joe Biden.
Right. This raw data suggested Trump was a larger-than-life figure in Epstein's world. His name was frequently discussed, likely in the context of business, society, gossip. It just shows his pervasive presence in Epstein's orbit.
And it's important to clarify these are email counts, mentions, not necessarily direct communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It shows the network of connections and the subjects of conversation, but the count itself is a statistical metric. It's not proof of criminal involvement.
The correspondence also exposed these surprisingly friendly, almost advisory relationships between Epstein and some journalists.
A friendly relationship with Michael Wolff, known for his Inside Scoop books, and a New York Times reporter. Evidence suggested the Times reporter was actually tipping off Epstein about a private investigator who was looking into him.
Which raises serious ethical questions.
Absolutely. And Wolff's communications went even further.
He was actively helping him.
The emails showed Michael Wolff counseling Epstein on how to handle the media when Trump was being asked about him. It suggests this chummy relationship where the journalist prioritized Epstein's defense strategy over objectivity.
And finally, let's circle back to Ghislaine Maxwell. Post-conviction, there have been these widespread allegations that she's getting special treatment in prison.
Allegations surfaced that Maxwell was receiving uncommon prison perks at FCI Tallahassee. Segregated status, special meals, special visits, access to a puppy.
And even unlimited toilet paper.
Which sounds absurd, but it's an uncommon luxury in federal prison. Legal experts who reviewed these claims said this is not standard, that is not typical for federal prisoners.
So what conclusion do legal veterans draw from this? Is it a sign of a continued quid pro quo?
It raises the strong specter of one. As one former prosecutor said, the government isn't going to give an incarcerated prisoner all of these perks in exchange for nothing.
The assumption is the government gains something of value.
Yes. Perhaps cooperation, or perhaps a guarantee that she is keeping your mouth shut and not implicating people in power or with money, which links right back to the original 2008 MPA and the protection of co-conspirators.
This entire deep dive, it just presents this harrowing narrative. From the murky financial origins to Maxwell's pivotal role, the profound legal failure of the NPA, the high-profile allegations, and then the catastrophic system failures around his death.
All compounded by those almost comedic technical flaws in releasing the files.
It's a complete picture of systemic breakdown.
Which really raises an important and necessary question for you, the listener, to consider. Given these documented systemic failures at every single checkpoint, the legal maneuvering for immunity, the inability of a federal jail to maintain basic safety, the technical incompetence in maintaining secrecy, how fundamentally does the complexity and power of the Epstein network undermine faith in institutional accountability?
Across the legal, political, and correctional systems.
And what does it actually take for a system this compromised to genuinely deliver justice?